Have you ever stopped to wonder about this? Why is it that in a world where most mammals are rocking a full fur coat, we humans are among the rare few that decided to toss ours out and stroll around naked? Back in 1967, British zoologist Desmond Morris wrote a science classic on human behavior called The Naked Ape. In it, he treated humans as just another species of hairless primate, comparing our quirks and habits with those of other animals. His take: what makes us truly special isn't our brains, it's that we're bold enough to strut through the wild in the buff. This dry little joke actually points to a surprising fact. Out of more than 6,000 species of mammals, humans are one of the very few that have voluntarily ditched their fur. We all know that for most mammals, fur isn't just decoration. It's a life-or-death necessity. Almost every single one of them is wrapped in a thick, insulating coat. But among the rare outliers whose body hair has faded away, we've got some interesting cases. Elephants, for example, have just a sparse scattering of hair over their massive bodies. Whales and dolphins are fully aquatic and have pretty much ditched fur altogether. Hippos barely have any hair at all. Choosing to voluntarily lose most of your body hair is already unusual in the animal kingdom. But humans, we're the oddballs among the oddballs. We'd smooth in all the expected places, yet stubbornly hairy where we've decided it still matters. In fact, if you count individual strands, humans actually have more hair follicles than chimpanzees. Millions of years ago, our ancient ancestors ditched their built-in sweaters, yeah, those hairy coats Mother Nature gave them for free, and decided to let loose, strutting across the savannah like they didn't have a care in the world, running wild and free with zero shame. Fast forward a few million years, and here we are clutching our anti-hair loss potions, scratching our scalps in the shower like it's some kind of therapy session, going to extreme lengths just to keep that receding hairline from making a full escape. Humans collectively shaved off their fur during evolution, only to freak out about bald spots in the 21st century. Isn't that just the ultimate cosmic joke? Evolution's way of trolling us? Maybe that last stubborn strand of hair blowing in the breeze is your final act of rebellion. Or maybe, just maybe, rocking a fresh, cool haircut is all you need to feel like a total boss again. So here is the big question. Why on earth did our ancestors decide to go bare-skinned? And why haven't humans, after losing all that fur, evolved tough, elephant-like skin to protect us like a suit of armor? Digging a little deeper. Why the heck did we ditch most of our body hair, but stubbornly hang on to the hair on our heads, our eyebrows, and those hairs the video reviewers aren't too keen on seeing? Why didn't we just go full-on bald, head to toe, like some kind of sleek, shiny robot? Is it 'cause we haven't quite leveled up to the Enon engineer status like in Prometheus yet? Or maybe, just maybe, we humans are still a work in progress, a beta version waiting for the full upgrade. So ever since forever, people have been going back and forth on this debate. Even Darwin couldn't resist throwing his 2 cents in. In 1871, in his book, The Descent of Man, he wrote, "Our ancestors' hair gradually disappeared under the pressure of sexual selection." What does that mean? Basically, he compared our bare skin to a peacock's tail. Not something for survival, but a sexy display to attract mates. In plain English, being bald is sexy. Our ancestors thought partners with less body hair looked more attractive, like, "I am just into you, fuzz-free and all." But honestly, Darwin's idea seems kinda ahead of its time for a bunch of humans living millions of years ago. Look at our close cousins, the chimpanzees. If they lose hair, it's not exactly a turn-on. Usually it means they're sick or getting old, and definitely not the best baby makers. So no matter how quirky our ancestors' taste was, I doubt they were all walking around with a full-blown bald fetish. In the history of science, explanations for why humans lost their body hair are all over the map. And when it comes to the theories cooked up by armchair experts, well, they just get weirder and weirder. Back in the 1960s, writer Elaine Morgan rolled out something called the aquatic ape hypothesis. She claimed humans once lived by the water, maybe even spent their days floating around like dolphins. To cut down on drag in the water, we supposedly ditched our fur. Okay, sure. But if that's the case, why keep the giant fluffy drag producer right on top of our heads? And here is the wildest part. She also said women's breasts evolved their buoyant shape specifically to grab male attention above the waterline. This theory had its 15 minutes of fame, but these days, it's been filed under pseudoscience bedtime stories. Then the Homer theory, which is even more out there, kinda like one of those chicken and egg riddles. Yup. Some scientists have actually claimed that humans only started losing their body hair after we began wearing clothes. The reasoning, clothes took over the job of keeping us warm. But if that's true, then why did we keep armpit hair, leg hair, and those other hairs the moderators don't love to talk about? By that logic, if humans start wearing hats all day, are we all destined to evolve into a bunch of smooth, shiny cue balls? And then there is the idea that having less hair makes you look smarter and more human. This gem came from a British-born anatomist in the early 20th century. According to him, we shed our fur to set ourselves apart from the rest of the animal kingdom, basically to look more civilized. If you buy that logic, a receding hairline isn't a problem at all. It's a little surprise from evolution. Humans, after all, are the boldest undressers in the entire mammal club. You think you are just bald? Nah, you are paying tribute to your ancestors while previewing the future version of humanity. Having less hair doesn't mean you've got low volume. It might just mean you've got a high IQ and a cooling system to match. Don't envy my shiny forehead. That's simply a road my thoughts have already paved. And who says hair loss isn't a kind of freedom? Back in the blazing African savannas, fewer hairs and more sweat glands might vent the difference between surviving the night and overheating to death. The Mediterranean hairline, that's the Bay of Wisdom, a receding hairline. That's just your thoughts moving forward, and a bald head. Oh, that baby can shine just as bright as any idea. Anyway, the list of ridiculous laugh-out-loud theories goes on. And after hearing them all, when you circle back to Darwin's old guesswork, it almost feels weirdly humble and sincere. With a perfectly straight face, the man himself said, maybe it was so females would find us more sexy. Honestly, coming from the father of natural selection, that sounds like a physics major trying to read a love letter. Of course, we're not here to roast any scientist. These bold thinkers are the very reason we keep inching closer to the truth. Of course, we're not here to roast any scientist. These bold thinkers are the very reason we keep inching closer to the truth. But really, the answer to this question isn't the most important part. What matters is how we use scientific thinking to tackle it. So, what do scientists today actually say about why humans ditched their fur? Let's see how their theories stack up against all those wild, one-of-a-kind ideas we've just talked about. Let us start with one of the most widely accepted ideas, the heat dissipation hypothesis. A few million years ago, on the scorching plains of East Africa, the sun was brutal, the air like a furnace. Our ancestors had already left the shady safety of the forest, venturing into open grasslands to chase down prey. It meant they not only spent hours running under the blazing sun, but also had to dodge heat stroke while doing it. So what's the move? Well, one day, the ancestors had a wild thought. What if we just ditched the fur? Don't laugh. This is legit science. Harvard biologist Daniel Lieberman calls it the built-in human air conditioning theory. Unlike most animals that pant to cool off, humans have the advantage of sweating, and not just here or there, but everywhere. Big skin surface, less hair, more sweat glands, the ultimate natural cooling system. Think about it. A dog covered in fur can only stick its tongue out to lose heat. Humans, we sweat right through our skin like we've got air conditioners set to max cool. But here is the kicker. If sweating is the key, lots of mammals sweat. So why are humans the only ones who went all in on this dramatic hair-off, sweat-on setup? well, that's where the parasite theory struts onto the stage. Scientists have discovered that lice and fleas might have been among the biggest driving forces behind humanity's hair loss history. In 2003, Nature published a study revealing that humans don't just have one type of louse, we've actually got three main branches: head lice, body lice, and pubic lice. Head lice live only in the hair on your head, and scientists believe both head lice and body lice originated from chimpanzees around 5 to 7 million years ago when humans and chimps went their separate ways. Our ancestors apparently took their lice along for the evolutionary journey. Head lice and body lice are really just two ecological forms of the same species, and research shows body lice split off about 72,000 years ago, right after humans started wearing clothes, which means we got naked first, then put on clothes. It wasn't the clothes that made us naked. I just don't get why scientists are so hung up on this. I mean, if we'd still had fur, who would bother wearing clothes?
I did it because
Okay,
I wanted
I take
to.
that back. Unlike other lice that live in body hair, body lice hide out in the seams of clothing, lying in wait until you are distracted. Then they sneak out for a quick blood snack. Pubic lice, on the other hand, develop exclusively in, well, the private sector. And they didn't even come from chimpanzee lice at all. They came from gorilla lice. Scientists suspect that pubic lice didn't just leap directly from gorillas to humans, but arrived thanks to shared habitats, or during some extremely intimate encounter between the two species. You know what I mean. Research suggests that, by about 3.3 million years ago, human body hair had mostly disappeared. Pubic lice and head lice were forced into a kind of awkward divorce, each claiming whatever patches of hair were still left. This not only indirectly shows that human body hair had already been cleared out around that time, but also left behind a handy evolutionary timestamp courtesy of the lice. Since lice can spread disease when crawling through body hair, losing most of that hair was like cutting off their hiding spots. And then there were even tinier enemies, fleas. Once early humans started shacking up in caves, fleas moved in as uninvited guests. They quickly realized that sticking with humans was way more of a sweet deal than hanging around other couch-surfing animals. Like monkeys. I mean, monkeys are always grooming each other, and if you're not careful, boom! You are the snack of the day for Mr. Monkey. And even if you manage to lay your eggs, your host might just take off swinging through the trees, leaving you stranded. But living on cave people, now that was prime real estate. Caves and early wooden huts had steady temps, stayed damp and stuffy, and early humans weren't exactly big on housekeeping. Perfect conditions for a flea 5-star resort. And the best part, fleas didn't even have to stay on the human body day and night. Their kids could crash in the dusty floor or hide in animal skin clothes. So some scientists came up with what's now called the parasite hypothesis. Losing body hair was basically an ancient pest-proofing strategy. No hair meant no cozy apartments for lice and fleas, and with a bit of scrubbing and some good sunbathing, our ancestors' living standards shot up faster than a flea on espresso. Before losing their fur, our ancestors had to walk around scratching themselves all day, not exactly a good look. So in the name of evolutionary cleanliness, they, Marie, condoed their body hair and said goodbye to most of it. Human hair loss wasn't a fashion trend, it was a hygiene revolution. But then comes the next question. Why only some hair? Why keep the hair on our heads, eyebrows, armpits, and, the VIP section? Scientists think these leftovers each have their own little job. Eyebrows help keep sweat out of your eyes, eyelashes block dust, nose hairs filter the air, and the hair on your head protects your noggin from sunburn and overheating, especially near the equator. It's basically your built-in parasol. As for armpit hair and pubic hair, don't blush. Their mission might be to help release sexual pheromones. Our ancestors used smell for kin recognition, and maybe even for telling friend from foe. The fact that we still have these patches means natural selection didn't go full scorched earth on our follicles. It spared the bits that were actually useful. In 2001, scientists discovered a gene called MC1R, which is linked to traits like hair color, hair density, and more. This gene mutation, related to both skin tone and hair type, is most common among Europeans. Generally, Europeans have lighter skin and lighter hair colors compared to Asians, including shades like red and blonde. Meanwhile, in populations near the equator where the sunlight is intense, such mutations are far less common. They've kept their darker skin tones, stronger pigmentation, and when it comes to hair, mostly tight curls, which means a few million years ago, when our ancestors first made their way out of the African savanna, they were all rocking tight, spiral curls, think Afro style. Later, when some of those ancestors wandered out of Africa into higher latitudes, they went, why is it getting chilly and the sunlight's nowhere near as fierce? The problem. When the weather got cold, their fluffy curls turned into wind tunnels, chilling their brains to the bone. And don't even get me started on rainy or snowy days. Those curls would tangle up like crazy, and the head stayed damp all day. Over time, those curls gradually evolved into straight hair, which was easier to drain and comb through. A classic example is East Asians. Straight hair is basically the default. Of course, the human transition from sunshade hat hair to thermal beanie hair was a very slow process. Nothing like modern women who on a whim can just perm it curly or flat iron it straight. Environmental adaptation is one of the key forces shaping how we lost hair in certain areas. In other words, the way our hair grows today is basically our ancestors' custom-made solution for the local climate. So here is the next burning question. Will we keep shedding hair until we evolve into some ultra-sleek, slip-and-slide version of humanity? It's an image that's popped into plenty of people's heads. Future humans, all shiny and smooth, like they just got a full-body wax. No razors, no depilatory creams, rocking naturally silky skin that always looks like it's been hit with a highlighter. Sounds like a dream come true for the fashion industry of tomorrow, right? But scientists, they just shrug and go, not so fast. From an evolutionary standpoint, whether we keep losing hair depends entirely on whether the environmental pressure to do so still exists. If modern life doesn't give us a compelling reason to ditch more hair, this trait might just plateau and stay put. Here is the fun part. Some scientists say humans haven't really lost hair at all. It's just gotten finer, shorter, and softer. This is called the vellus hair trend. The follicles are still there. They've just gone into stealth mode. Which means if you think you are hairless right now, you are basically looking at a bunch of undercover hairs. And let's be real, evolution has never been about looking pretty. It's not a fashion consultant, it's a hardcore pragmatist. It couldn't care less how hairy your legs are. It only cares if you can survive long enough to pass on your genes. Unless, of course, some new environmental twist shows up. Say, global warming gets so bad we're constantly in scorching heat, and shedding more hair becomes a must for better sweat cooling. Or maybe some brand new parasite shows up, turning body hair into a viral breeding ground, forcing us to go full cue ball, or plot twist. Tech meets beauty standards, and everyone just uses gene editing for one-click smooth skin. By then, you won't be stressing about how many laser hair removal sessions it takes. You might just have the doctor ask right after you are born, so which zones do you want to keep hair on? Or maybe we'll skip the whole body question entirely. Future humans could ditch physical bodies altogether and live fully uploaded in the metaverse. Hair or no hair, that's just a slider in your avatar settings. Looking back at humanity's grand hair-shedding saga, Desky here is actually a secret theme hiding in there. We've never been the hairiest species in nature, but we've always been the most stylish. And honestly, the question of why humans lost so much hair might never have a perfect answer. It's like so many of evolution's simple yet unsolvable mysteries. Why do we walk on just 2 legs without complaining? Why can we speak, write poetry, and yet freak out about going bald? Maybe the answer doesn't even matter. You could say, humanity is a bunch of thinkers who crawled out of a jungle of fur. We didn't lose our hair because we were civilized. We became more aware of civilization because we lost it. In fact, our modern-day panic over receding hairlines might actually prove something. We are the only animal that's self-aware about the state of our own hair. See, even our anxieties have evolved in a uniquely human way. That's just who we are, contradictory and indecisive. We want to shave it all off, but also want to keep it. We ripping it out with one hand, rubbing in growth serum with the other. We laugh out loud, then sneak into the bathroom to count the hairs in the mirror. Our ancestors let their hair situation run wild for millions of years, yet here we are still obsessing over those few strands. But maybe that's the charming thing about us, isn't it? So next time you find yourself staring at your hairline in the bathroom mirror, don't stress out. You are just taking part in a discussion that's been going on for millions of years. A round table with Darwin, with seals, and with your ancestors on the East African plains. Is baldness a kind of victory? Maybe you are not losing hair at all. Maybe you are evolving.